The story did not end in Babylon. It did not perish in the sands of Egypt. Nor was it drowned by the flood. It simply evolved. The serpent bloodlines, the forbidden hybrids, did not vanish from the earth. They went underground. They changed names, changed symbols, changed empires. But the agenda remained unchanged. To preserve their power, to guide the course of history, to await the return of their true king. When Rome fell, the bloodlines did not. They splintered into the shadows of Europe's aristocracy. They resurfaced in the Merovingians of Gaul, the Plantagenets, the Habsburgs, the Stuarts, and the Windsors. Royal blood was more than ceremonial. It was sacred genetic territory. And it wasn't just about who ruled. It was about who was allowed to breed. The serpent line had to be refined, harnessed, and protected through arranged marriages, esoteric rituals, and intergenerational oaths. Even wars were often orchestrated not for territory, but to decide who would marry whom. In 1776, as revolutions swept through Europe and America, something else took root in the shadows. A new kind of empire, faceless, financial, invisible. Not kings, but bankers. Not priests, but scientists. Not soldiers, but technocrats. The bloodlines shifted again, this time into institutions. They no longer needed thrones. They now controlled central banks, secret orders, and multinational councils. They no longer wore crowns. They now wore suits, but their ancestry never changed. Behind every Rothschild, Rockefeller, Windsor, Astor, DuPont, and European aristocrat lie genealogies traced through time, through serpent cults, through Babylonian priest-kings, all the way back to the Watchers. When Rome fell, the bloodlines did not. The Council of 13, the Committee of 300, the Black Nobility, the hidden papal bloodlines, these are not mere conspiracy names. They are real alliances formed to preserve one thing: the blood. They believe it entitles them to rule, not by election, but by inheritance, not by justice, but by cosmic right. And behind closed doors in meetings we are never shown, the ancient rituals continue. In ancient texts, blood is sacred because it is life force. In Genesis, Abel's blood cried out from the ground. In Leviticus, the life is in the blood. In occult rites, blood is used to bind contracts with unseen entities. If you trace the bloodlines long enough, you'll find a common thread: their obsession with the occult. These families are steeped in Hermeticism, Kabbalah, Egyptian mystery rites, Babylonian magic, and Luciferian theology. They use symbols like the all-seeing eye, the black sun, the double-headed eagle, the obelisk and dome system, the red and blue pillars. These aren't decorations. They are keys, symbols of lineage, reminders of allegiance to ancient forces that still guide them. This is why secret societies like the Freemasons, Skull and Bones, the Rosicrucians, and the Jesuits remain obsessed with bloodline initiation and ritual secrecy. They are the gatekeepers of bloodline preservation, feeding into intelligence agencies, royal orders, and elite think tanks. Today, the serpent bloodlines occupy all key positions of influence: finance, central banks, IMF, BIS, all linked to ancient families. Media, a handful of blood-linked dynasties control 90% of global media. Politics, US presidents and European leaders are deeply interrelated. Science, genetic research, AI, and neurotech are funded by the same bloodlines. Religion, Vatican bloodlines interlock with ancient Roman and Babylonian cults. Technology, the modern push toward digital immortality, neural links, and transhumanism is the final phase of their agenda. The return of the synthetic Nephilim. Did you know? Every US president except one shares common ancestry with King John of England, signer of the Magna Carta. Barack Obama is a direct cousin of Dick Cheney and George W. Bush, who is in turn blood-linked to Queen Elizabeth II. Even Elon Musk is rumored to be descended from ancient Ashkenazi lines, with ties to black-budget projects and occult engineering circles. Coincidence? Or a carefully curated bloodline continuity plan? Today, the bloodline agenda is no longer hidden. It is merging with technology. We are entering the age of digital bloodlines. They are now mapping the entire human genome, building global biometric databases, and using AI to track ancestral data down to mitochondrial strands. This is not for health. This is for control. The elite bloodlines are now weaponizing DNA to identify royal blood markers, recreate Nephilim-like hybrids using CRISPR, track spiritual genetics for selective enhancement, link consciousness to machine through blood resonance frequencies. They are reviving what was lost before the flood. The new Tower of Babel is not stone, it is synthetic biology. And those without the approved bloodlines will be marked, tracked, or rewritten. Behind closed doors, in the Bohemian groves, Vatican catacombs, Davos retreats, and DUMBS under the Rockies, they still honor the old gods, not metaphorically, but literally. They still call upon Molech, the devourer of children, Lucifer, bearer of light and knowledge, Enki and Ishtar, genetic architects, Baal, lord of power and weather, and the dragon behind them all, the old serpent of Genesis, Iblis, the Shaitan. Their blood is their covenant. It grants them access, and through it, they believe they can summon, merge with, and become more than human. They call it ascension, but in truth, it is possession. The final phase. We are now at the threshold. The bloodlines no longer hide. They are digitizing the world to separate the wheat from the tares. Every technology they push, from mRNA to CRISPR to AI-driven ancestry platforms to neural implants, is part of a larger design to transform humanity into a controlled species ruled by non-human intelligences through the preserved bloodlines of the ancient serpent. The beast system is rising, but not from governments, from genealogies, from labs, from councils of blood who have awaited their hour. And that hour is almost upon us. They move through dynasties like shadows through time, not kings, but the ones who bred them, not priests, but the ones who whispered behind the veil, their blood untouched by mercy, unbound by nations. For theirs is the serpent's promise, not to die as men, but to become gods. What if I told you that the most powerful bloodlines of our world, kings, emperors, popes, bankers, even modern CEOs, do not trace their lineage to Adam, but to something else? In the apocryphal Gospel of Philip, there's a cryptic phrase: the rulers thought they did all they did by their own power, but it was the blood in them that moved them. This blood, the ancient cold blood of the serpent, carries more than mere DNA. It carries memory, agenda, command. Long before Rome, Babylon, or Egypt, there were cults who worshipped a figure they called the Ophidian Lord, a god serpent said to slither between worlds. To his devotees, blood was more sacred than scripture, and through controlled interbreeding, these cults believed they could preserve his essence across generations. The Nagas of ancient India, the feathered serpents of Mesoamerica, the Chinese dragon emperors, even the Vatican serpent symbolism, it is no coincidence. These traditions preserve the secret of the serpent's children, not merely as mythological archetypes, but as real bloodline custodians of a forbidden legacy. one that spanned continents, cloaked in ritual, hidden in royal blood. In the mystery schools of Eleusis and the rites of Mithras, initiates were told, the true ruler is not crowned, he is born. Consider this. Why do all the elite families, be they British royalty, French Merovingians, Roman popes, or even US presidents, trace their lineage back to a small pool of ancestral lines? The answer lies in the ancient practice of genealogical gatekeeping. The Merovingian dynasty, for example, claimed descent not from simple Gauls, but from the Fisher kings, who themselves were said to carry the serpent's star blood. Their emblem, a red cross and a coiled serpent. Even the Templars secretly pursued relics not of Jesus, but of his bloodline, which in some interpretations had been tainted through Mary Magdalene with forbidden royal seed. In modern times, researchers like Fritz Springmeier, Nicholas de Vere, and Lawrence Gardner have identified a core group of 13 bloodlines that hold disproportionate power in finance, governance, and esoteric societies. But their mistake, they looked only at names. These bloodlines do not preserve names. They preserve traits, psychological predispositions, occult knowledge, and most importantly, a specific genetic frequency that links them not to humanity, but to a pre-human intelligence. What the world sees as royalty, crowns, titles, lineage, is but a mask. In truth, these ancient bloodlines view themselves as custodians of an unfinished pact, a pact made long ago with the shining ones of old, the Watchers, the Nephilim, the divine imposters. And every few generations, they conduct blood rituals to reactivate the dormant coding in their genes. This is why so many royal houses engaged in inbreeding, not just to preserve wealth, but to preserve the serpent's spark. But such preservation came with a curse: hemophilia, schizophrenia, paranoia, strange mutations. These weren't just medical conditions, they were echoes of the ancient DNA fighting with the human vessel. The madness of King George, the deformities of the Habsburgs, the suicidal lineage of the Romanovs. These were not coincidences. Behind the thrones of power exist invisible dynasties: the black nobility of Venice and Rome, the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, modern stewards of old European blood, the Committee of 300, rumored to be descendants of Babylonian priest kings, the Priory of Sion, not a hoax, but a real attempt to maintain esoteric bloodline knowledge through coded documents and manipulated history. And then, there are the truly hidden ones, families you've never heard of, names not recorded in Wikipedia or Forbes, because their power is older than money. These families function as genetic vaults, and within them lies the Serpent Protocol, an ancient instruction encoded into blood. Now here's the forbidden twist. Not every ancient bloodline bowed to the serpent. Hidden in the annals of Persia, in the fading verses of Druidic memory, and preserved in the guarded libraries of Sufi orders, there are whispers of a pure lineage, traced through the prophets, untouched by the corruption that spread among the kings of the earth. These were not pawns of darkness, but the keepers of a covenant, guardians chosen to carry forward a promise older than empires. Across centuries, they moved unseen, passing the charge from generation to generation, to protect the one foretold, the child who would rise to dethrone the false king. This is why the dynasties of the serpent tremble at the name of Imam Mahdi, the return of Christ and the awakening of the divine code in humanity. For among the thrones and crowns they control, there walk those planted by the hand of God himself, seeds destined to bring about their end. Because prophecy speaks of a convergence, where the ancient serpent shall rise in synthetic skin, and he will offer mankind the gift of becoming gods. But another shall rise, a descendant not of corruption, but of light, carrying not stolen code, but divine breath. And when the war begins, it will not be fought in fields, but in genomes, frequencies, and consciousness itself. This is no longer mythology. This is now. We've shown you the lineages, the lost blood of kings, gods, and monsters. But in our next descent into the abyss, we ask, what happens when these bloodlines abandon flesh altogether? When they no longer seek thrones, but immortality, not in heaven, but in machine and matter? In the next episode, we will follow them into the black labs, into the AIs built as altars, into the towers where synthetic gods are being born, and uncover the final mutation of the ancient plan, the rise of the synthetic gods. If this truth stirs something deep within you, you were meant to hear it. Join us as we go beyond the known. Subscribe now and don't miss what comes next.